You're listening to Soap Dirt, the latest in television entertainment news.
Hey, YNR fans. So Sharon Newman went and did some murder. She attacked Heather Stevens and then dumped her body. But remember, it's a soap, so you can't say dead and gone just yet. It's Belinda from Soap Dirt. And let's talk about what Sharon does to Heather and whether there's any chance at all she survived this bloody incident. So last we saw Sharon before this murdery moment, she was with Cameron dripping some poison into Daniel's whiskey bottle. I was worried that Heather or underage drinker Lucy might get into it and get sick or get dead. But what happened to Heather was so much worse than getting some poisoned booze. By the end of that last episode where she was poisoning it, Sharon was leaving the apartment. She spilled the toxic whiskey. She broke a couple of glasses. And then Heather is there at the door. She busted her. And of course, she wanted to know why Sharon was in their apartment and how she got in. And Heather wouldn't let Sharon leave, and she is demanding answers. So this is the Thursday U.S. episode. Every question Heather asked was met by another lie from Sharon. She said she was there to wait on Daniel and that he told her the super could let her in to wait. Heather's like, no, that's a lie. Whatever flimsy excuse Sharon made, and there were several, Heather was right there calling her out. No, that's a lie. That's a lie. That's a lie. And then she accused Sharon of being there to harm Daniel or somebody else in the family. Heather called out Sharon for the recent events where she's been terrorizing all of them. And Sharon insists she just wanted to talk to Daniel to ask him to leave town. Sharon said seeing him is a constant reminder that he killed Cassie. That's how she's saying it. Heather didn't like that one bit and said, that's not what happened. And she said, you know, Cassie was driving, not Daniel. It was a terrible accident. He feels bad about it, thinks about it all the time, which is its own punishment. But Sharon's unraveling, and when a scared Heather grabbed her phone, things got physical. Sharon slapped the phone out of Heather's hand, and then she's telling Sharon, look, I'm just going to call Nick. And that set Sharon off, who is screaming and begging her not to call Nick. And so then Heather says, you know, maybe 911. I'm just going to call the police. She's reaching for her phone. Sharon went running for the door. Heather should have just let her go, but instead she chased her, and then all hell broke loose. Sharon threw Heather down onto the floor, and Heather is, yelling at her, you've lost your mind. And then Sharon blacked out. When she came to, there's Heather on the floor, bloody head injury, and apparently no pulse. And then Cameron is there advising Sharon, let's take care of this ASAP. Let's get it all cleaned up. So she wrapped Heather's body up in sheets, blood everywhere, grabs up the broken glass, the whiskey bottle. Sharon took Heather's phone, her keys, her purse, basically all evidence that Heather was even in the apartment, dragged her down the stairs, shoved her in the trunk of her car, and then Sharon drove to a bridge and dumped Heather's body into the river. Cameron is very proud of her, which is a terrible idea. You don't want Cameron Kirsten proud of you for anything. And of course, back at the seedy side motel, the seedy side motel, Sharon was completely horrified about what she did. And Cameron told her, you'll learn to live with it. And then he reminded Sharon she's killed before. I mean, come on, she's hallucinating a man she killed, a year ago, maybe less. And of course, Cameron deserved it, but Heather certainly did not deserve what happened to her. Cameron thinks there's a chance the body won't even be found. And since Sharon cleaned up things, maybe everybody will be fooled and the police won't come knocking at her door. So here's my question. This being a soap opera and not a true crime series or an episode of CSI or something like that, is she dead? Heather sure seemed dead. Bloody head wound, no apparent pulse, dragged downstairs in a sheet, dumped into a river. Sharon definitely dumped her body, and she felt certain that Heather was dead when she did it. But this is Young and the Restless. where dead is not always dead. You know, I mean, Chloe blew up Adam in the Justin Hartley days. He was handcuffed and trapped in a cabin that blew to bits with witnesses there seeing it happen. Yet he was in Vegas a few years later with Mark Grossman's face playing poker, chilling, and now he is back in Genoa City. So as to Heather dying or possibly not dying, we didn't see what Sharon did to her, you know, to cause that head wound because she blacked out when she attacked Heather. And if you've ever had a head injury, even a minor one that breaks the skin, you may know even a small head wound can bleed. There's so many blood vessels there. Granted, that was a whole lot of blood that we saw when Sharon wrapped Heather in the sheet, but still, maybe that injury was survivable. Sharon checked her pulse and didn't find one, but she's not an EMT, she's not a doctor, and she was in this manic panic state at that point. Maybe Sharon missed something. Now, dragging Heather down a bunch of flights of stairs would have done more damage to her if she was still alive. And then, of course, Sharon shoved her off a bridge into the river. Depending on how far the fall was, that could have finished her off if Heather wasn't already dead at that point. However, being dumped in cold water can also stop injuries from bleeding and actually save your life. They even put people into, low temperature states in the emergency room to try and stop damage and to save people's lives. So, if Sharon misread the situation and Heather had a thready pulse and she pushed her off still alive, there's a chance. Heather could wash up downstream, be found by someone. That would be a much better outcome for Sharon than her being dead. As it stands, Cameron is still living rent-free in Sharon's head. She has done a very bad thing. Even if Heather survives, we are looking at very serious consequences. Sharon doesn't need prison. She needs, deep and ongoing psychiatric help. And in fact, that's what Heather was saying to her before she attacked her. No doubt, Sharon is unhinged and in a mental health spiral. But if Heather is dead, I could see Sharon being stuck in Fairview indefinitely, way beyond the time it takes to stabilize her medications and her bipolar, because Heather's attack proved that Sharon is a danger to others. So could Heather have survived this? Maybe. Will she? Maybe, maybe not. I will say this. If Heather is indeed dead, I'm going to be pretty mad if they don't bring back Doug Davidson as her dad, Paul Williams, for her funeral. And if Heather is dead, what happens next? Well, Daniel will come home and report Heather missing. I suspect Sharon didn't do as good a job cleaning up the crime scene as Cameron thinks that she did. There might be shards of glass lying around, some traces of that poison tainted whiskey, maybe a smear of blood. Sharon might have missed some of the blood trail down the stairwell, even if she cleaned up the apartment and hallway okay. If Daniel finds anything like that, he will be terrified, as if Heather being missing and not home where she's supposed to be wasn't bad enough. And of course, Sharon's going to be the first person Daniel thinks of because of her recent antics. And he just saw earlier in the evening how alarmed Mariah and Nick were about not knowing where Sharon is. So I'm guessing Daniel, called the police, will alert Nick that something has happened to Heather, ask him, did you ever find Sharon? In the end, the best thing is if Heather somehow survived. But based on the episode, she definitely seemed doomed. And that's, the most extreme possibility. However, there is one more possibility. Just hear me out. What if this is all one big nightmare that Sharon is having and it's not real events? Because the episode after that is the big Sharon Case 30th anniversary playing Sharon Newman. And I just want to put this out there. I think it's plausible just because she is having these full-on hallucinations where she sees him, she hears him, she's interacting with him like it's real life. Sharon is completely out of her mind. So she could actually have, had a hallucination of all of this. That's still on the table, at least until we see Friday's episode. But if it's not a bad dream and Heather really is dead, that changes everything for Sharon forever. We'll know more soon. Be sure and drop your comments. Subscribe if you haven't. Definitely come back. It's me, Belinda from Soap Dirt, talking Young and the Restless with you 7 days a week.
Thank you for being a loyal listener. Follow us wherever you get your podcast, because you don't want to miss the next episode. Soap Dirt is on all the major podcast platforms, including Apple Podcast, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and more.